It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10. Our top story. Sir Jeffrey Donaldson resigns as leader of the Democratic Unionist Party after being charged with historical sexual offences. One of lawless Haiti's most powerful gang leaders tells Sky News he's ready to consider a ceasefire if he's included in political talks. Rishi Sunak is criticised for announcing a surprise round of honours with a knighthood for a major Conservative donor. Getting there slowly. Rough weather delays, Dover ferries with motorway hold-ups too for the Easter getaway. Worrying times on the farm, the Countryside campaign to reduce dog attacks on livestock.
This actually weirdly feels like a hug. But I can't actually feel it.
The artificial intelligence that could bring loved ones back to life as digital avatars. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30. Good evening. Sir Jeffrey Donaldson has quit as leader of the Democratic Unionist Party after being charged with historical sexual offences. He's due to appear in court next month. A 57-year-old woman has been charged with aiding and abetting in relation to the same police investigation. It comes just weeks after Sir Jeffrey decided to bring the DUP back to power sharing in Northern Ireland. Our senior Ireland correspondent, David Blevins, reports.
2 weeks ago, he was celebrating St. Patrick's Day in Washington. This week, Sir Jeffrey Donaldson was arrested, then charged with non-recent serious sexual offences. A 57-year-old woman was charged with aiding and abetting in connection with the alleged offences. Both were released on bail to appear in court later. In a statement, the DUP said the party chairman has received a letter from Sir Jeffrey Donaldson MP confirming that he has been charged with allegations of a historical nature and indicating that he is stepping down as leader of the Democratic Unionist Party with immediate effect. In accordance with the party rules, the party officers have suspended Mr Donaldson from membership pending the outcome of a judicial process. East Belfast MP Gavin Robinson has been appointed interim leader and was visibly emotional discussing the news that had broken.
I think it's been a devastating revelation and has caused tremendous shock, not just for myself personally or my colleagues within the DUP, but for the community right across Northern Ireland. It came as a great shock. But we are a party and individuals that believe in justice. We have faith in our criminal justice system.
When did the party become aware of the allegations and what has been the response of the party to them?
Very late last night, the party became aware whenever it was revealed publicly that there had been an individual and another charged, and it became clear to us who that individual was. In the early hours of this morning, we took steps to make sure we could bring colleagues together, discuss what it was we had learned, and take the appropriate steps that we could. I recognise that in the immediate aftermath of such shocking news, there will be some, and there have already been some, who have sought to score cheap political points, who have sought to engage in conspiracy theories, who somehow enjoy or will manipulate such devastating news for those involved. That's not our position.
Jeffrey Donaldson has been an MP for 27 years. He helped to negotiate the £1 billion deal with the Tories when the party held the balance of power at Westminster. More recently, the man who'd left the Ulster Unionist Party over the Good Friday Agreement had to compromise himself to secure the restoration of the power-sharing government in Northern Ireland. Jeffrey Donaldson remains an MP for now, but this could trigger a by-election and the inauspicious end to the career of Northern Ireland's longest-serving MP. David Blevins.
David joins me now. David, the DUP have just gone back to power sharing. How damaging will this be? What are the political ramifications of all of this?
Well, I think it would be difficult to overstate the potential political ramifications. Firstly, for the Democratic Unionist Party, 3 of the 8 seats they hold at Westminster are deemed marginal, and they'll now be battling to hold them in the upcoming general election against a backdrop of their party leader having to resign to contest allegations of serious sexual offences of a historical nature. That certainly gives Gavin Robinson, the interim leader, a mountain to climb in terms of the general election campaign. But there is the wider question, as you say, the potential threat to the new power-sharing government of Northern Ireland, where the DUP's Emma Little-Pengelly serves as Deputy First Minister alongside Sinn Féin's Michelle O'Neill. And the First Minister, Michelle O'Neill, conscious of that potential threat, has issued a statement talking about the need for the devolved government to continue to deliver for the whole community. And it is a whole community in Northern Ireland that is in deep shock. This was an absolute bombshell. No one saw it coming. Jeffrey Donaldson was deemed to be at the height of his political success, having led the party back into stormont, and now the party's in disarray, and his political career would appear to be over.
David, thank you. The leader of one of Haiti's most powerful gangs has told Sky News he would consider a ceasefire and talks on the political future of the country if they were included. Jimmy Cherizier, known as Barbecue, leads one of the gangs now in control of Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince. For the first time, he says he's prepared to talk peace, but only if he's given a seat at the table. The mobster is the leader of a gang alliance called the G9 Family and Allies. He's been speaking to Sky's chief correspondent, Stuart Ramsey.
He's not responsible for all the violence sweeping across Haiti's capital, but be under no doubt he's at the centre of it. His fighters are never far away. Is this now all your territory? Because it was an open road when I was last here.
Yeah.
Jimmy Cherizier, universally referred to here as Barbecue, is the head of one of the most powerful gangs in Port-au-Prince. But he's also the head of a gang consortium that's brought Haiti to its knees. He took us through the roadblocks of buses they've put in place to stop police raids on his territory. That territory now extends over one of the city's main roads, an economic highway he controls in its entirety. Barbecue sees himself as a revolutionary for the people, and he rails against corrupt politicians and oligarchs. He dismisses all the efforts underway here to form a transitional council that will govern Haiti. But for the first time, he's told Sky News he would consider a ceasefire and talks if his people are represented. This is significant.
Nous croyons dans dialogue. Nous pour dialogue, nous toujours prôner pour un dialogue. Mais groupe moun sa qui la classe politique ça qui là, yo pas là pour dialogue. Raison parce que yo pas pour Haïti dans cœur ou même genre avec nous. Classe politique qui là y a fait une exclusion côté que y a dit bandit, nèg azam baladan. Mais son façon pour renouveler le système Jean-Lia parce que le système il vient dans bout li. Et écart qui gagne entre moun riche et moun pauvre en Haïti en li trop. Dans le monde entier gagne écart entre moun riche et moun pauvre. Mais Jean fait en Haïti ali indécent. En nous prêt toute solution depuis c'est haïtien qui sous table. Nous même nous prêt pour nous chita parler avec tout le monde parce que ça qui passe dans pays là nous pas fiers.
Inside his territory, despite the poverty, life is relatively peaceful and organised. Unlike in much of Port-au-Prince, queues for food Barbecue gets brought in are orderly. Usually it's chaos. But here people wait knowing that there are enough supplies for the whole community. And this is a source of Barbecue's strength. To the outside world, he may be a gangster, but here he's a sort of Robin Hood.
Well, we're right in the heart of Barbecue's gangland territory, and I have to say the atmosphere here is very different to large parts of the rest of Port-au-Prince. It's much more chilled, much more relaxed. There's aid distribution, it's not chaotic. What the sense you get from this is that people feel safe inside here. The battlefield is outside the barricades, which is over there. Here, this is much more like a normal town, if you like.
The road Barbecue now controls is all but deserted. The signs of battle are everywhere, The burnt-out cars and deserted buildings, the visual signs of uprooted families who've been forced to flee in their tens of thousands. There are plans to bring an international force here to impose order, but Barbecue says any force will lead to more violence.
Si Kenyan yo vini, premièrement, yo va venir faire massacre dans le quartier populaire parce que oligarques yo avec politiciens yo pour l'orienter yo vers le quartier populaire sous prétexte que y a vinn décider tirer bandits, sous prétexte que y a vinn décider tirer gang, yo pral entrer dans le quartier populaire et que pour venir faire massacre. À ce moment-là, nous-mêmes qui gen zam, nous ne pouvons pas quitter ça. Mais je dis à gon bagay qui ont ti classe évolué. Je dis depuis militaires kenyans yo entré ou bien policiers kenyans yo whatever, l'autre policier qui est entré, nous avons considéré comme des agresseurs. Nous avons considéré comme des envahisseurs. Et je dis à nous ne pouvons pas collaborer avec aucun envahisseur, aucun agresseur qui vient sortir pour passer indépendance pays nous en bas pied. Nous avons continué de n'importe façon.
Jimmy Chirizier, a former policeman and self-proclaimed man of the people, he paused to fly a kite. An Easter tradition here, laughing and joking with his people. A criminal to many, but an unlikely hero in his territory, no ordinary society needs people like Barbecue. But Haiti isn't normal. How or when it can achieve normality is impossible to predict. Stuart Ramsey, Sky News, Port-au-Prince.
The Easter getaway began today with an estimated 2.6 million car journeys made on the UK's roads. There were long delays at Dover after ferry companies reported services being disrupted because of strong winds in the channel. Milena Veselinovic reports.
It's the annual voyage that fills our roads, railways and ports. The first day of the Easter getaway bringing congestion and gridlock. This tailback on the approach to Dover stretching for miles and leaving some passengers stranded in their cars for hours.
We were actually just driving from a hotel very close by, and we just wanted to take a turn, a 180 turn, but it was not allowed, so we had to go all the way to the aft. So, yeah, it's terrible.
So what we've been here, nearly 4 hours. Just this bit here alone has been about an hour. So, but we're hoping we will get to Disney at some point today.
High winds in the English Channel added to the delays, but port authorities say it's now mostly under control.
We did suffer a bit of backlog overnight because of the weather impacting on the sailings, but we've gotten back on top of it. Our peak travel time for the tourist vehicles is from early morning, maybe about 6 until middle of the afternoon. And then we would expect that to start to drop off.
On the railways too, disruption, with planned engineering works taking out some of the busiest routes for the whole of the Easter weekend.
There are no trains running to or from London Euston other than the London Overground. And for the most part, people have been aware of this. As you can see, it's fairly quiet here, but it's the visitors from abroad, the tourists, who are being caught out by the engineering works.
Jason and Leah landed from Australia only yesterday and were on their way to see family in Rugby.
We got on at Camden and they said the trains were running here at Euston, and then we get here and they say they're not. So it's like misinformation that we're getting.
And how much longer is this going to make your journey?
Another hour and a half.
Yeah.
We're on holiday, mate. It's all right, we'll get there, but it is a bit of a pain.
And with work on the tracks, many have opted for the roads. 2.6 million car journeys are expected on Good Friday, and 14 million trips by road could be made by the end of the weekend, according to the RAC, with Visit England saying 11 million of us are planning an overnight trip this Easter. And with airports too reporting a surge in passengers compared to last year, the great Easter escape is well and truly underway. Milena Veselinovic, Sky News.
Time now for a look at some of the day's other top stories for you. And Pope Francis has used a wheelchair to lead a Good Friday service at the Vatican. Good Friday signifies the most sombre day in the Christian calendar, marking the death of Jesus by crucifixion. The Vatican announced the Pope would miss the traditional Good Friday procession just as the event was about to begin, saying in a statement the measure was necessary to conserve his health. Rishi Sunak has been criticised for announcing a surprise round of honours, including a knighthood for a major donor to the Conservative Party. It was announced on Thursday, before the Easter bank holiday weekend, that Mohammed Mansour was being knighted for business, charity and political service. He gave £5 million to the Conservatives in 2023 and is a senior treasurer at the party.
You laughing in brain? No, sir! You better stop eyeballing me, boy.
Louis Gossett Jr., the first black man to win a supporting actor Oscar, has died aged 87. He won the award for his role in the film An Officer and a Gentleman, alongside Richard Gere in 1983. The National Farmers Union has warned that farm animals worth £2.5 million were severely injured or killed by dogs last year. The NFU is now calling on people visiting the countryside over Easter to make sure to stay in control of their pets. Dan Whitehead reports from Gloucestershire.
For sheep farmer Matt, this is a busy but dangerous time. Last year, 7 of his flock died, attacked by dogs off their leads.
Not just the fact the dog attacking the one sheep, it's the stress the dog causes to the sheep. The after effect with, like, if they're in lamb, you're going to lose lambs by abortion. You're going to have lambs having sheep having heart attacks. Obviously, we put a lot of our own money and sweat and tears into getting to the sheep where they're at, and for someone to come and ruin it in 5 seconds because they're just they don't look around before they let a dog off the lead, and it's heartbreaking, really.
Countryside police forces have just begun Operation Recall, urging dog owners to keep their pets under control around livestock.
We're heading into the peak of lambing season. It's the most worrying time for farmers when it comes to dog attacks. It's a problem that costs millions of pounds, and it's getting worse.
According to NFU Mutual, last year, £2.4 million worth of farm animals were killed or severely injured by dogs. That number is nearly 30% higher on the previous year. The southwest of England is the worst affected area, with dog attacks costing an estimated £359,000 in 2023. One possible reason, a boom in new, inexperienced dog owners during COVID.
I think it falls onto everybody to protect their own livestock. You know, when you're a dog owner, you want to protect your dog just as much as a farmer wants to protect their sheep. This is about taking responsibility. So I would say to anybody that's out there walking, enjoying the countryside with their dog, is just think twice, take a little bit of responsibility. And if you're not 100% certain that your dog will come back to you when you call its name, then maybe don't let it off its lead.
It is yet another concern for farmers at a time that is all about new life. The risk of it being lost increases. Dan Whitehead, Sky News in Oxfordshire.
The UK has announced a near doubling in aid for Sudan as the humanitarian crisis there continues to escalate. It's been nearly a year since Sudan's brutal civil war began, displacing millions. The latest conflict started when the Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, launched a coup. The paramilitary force, led by its commander, known as Himedi, had formerly been under the Sudanese government, but they're now fighting the government's own armed forces, led by Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. The RSF has taken control of large swathes of Sudan, including most of the capital, Khartoum. The UN says more than 8 million people have been displaced since April, and at least 12,000 people have been killed. Analysis by Sky's data and forensics team has found that fire is being used as a tactic. There have been 180 separate incidents of settlements being targeted. South and West Darfur were the worst affected. Our Africa correspondent, Yusra El-Bagir, sent this report.
In Darfur, where there's smoke, there's usually fighting. And in some cases, the perpetrators make themselves known. Militiamen affiliated with the RSF, proudly filming their ambush with smoke rising in the back. Scorched earth tactics used in the Darfur conflict of the early 2000s, on display again. A team of investigators at the Center for Information Resilience have verified 180 individual fires that have impacted 108 villages since war broke out between the army and the RSF in mid-April 2023. An analysis by Sky's data and forensics team found that over a quarter had been targeted more than once.
There is a clear pattern that suggests that these fires are conflict related. What we've also seen is that it's not just settlements being targeted, but there is also frequent fires at IDP camps, which would result in double displacement and people having to leave again.
Have you ever seen anything like this, Anouk?
But this scale, we haven't, I have personally not seen this before, which of course is difficult to quantify in that sense. Scorched earth tactics are not necessarily a new phenomenon, but the way that they are being rolled out is shocking.
Settlements in West and South Darfur have been the worst hit, with our analysis showing many were burnt again, even after the rapid support forces took control. Satellite images of Mistere in West Darfur appear to show most of the town being systematically destroyed by fire since October last year. But even before then, we watched from the border as fires ravaged the town and civilians fled gunfire. In North Darfur, the holdout state, there's an ongoing fight for power. Recent fires have been from army airstrikes. This one killed at least 9 people and left 12 families homeless. Nermat tells us they have no water, no food, and no place to live. She says they're gathered on the ash and burnt remains of their homes with nowhere to go, hoping for help. Just one example of the tragedies fueling the largest displacement crisis in the world. A single fire destroying a neighborhood, and a blaze of fires destroying a nation. Yusra al-Bagher, Sky News.
An investigation has begun in South Africa after 45 people were killed in a bus crash, with the only survivor being an 8-year-old girl. The bus veered off a bridge in the northeast of the country, falling 50 metres before bursting into flames. Alice Porter has the story.
The desperate search for clues as to how this deadly crash could have happened. We know the bus lost control on a bridge over a mountain pass 125 miles north of the capital, Pretoria. It crashed through the barrier and plunged 50 metres into a ravine, bursting into flames as it hit the ground.
We were at the scene, we tried to help, and there was nothing we could do because there were flames. Looking at our surroundings, ambulances and fire brigades all come from afar.
Astonishingly, an 8-year-old girl is the only survivor. She's receiving treatment for serious injuries. The victims had all come from Botswana's capital, Gaborone, and were travelling to the South African town of Moria for a popular Easter pilgrimage.
It's a very sad situation. These people came from very far and they did not even get to their destination. And I'd like to pass on my condolences to the families that are involved, and may their soul rest in peace.
An investigation is underway into the cause of the crash. Just a day before the accident, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa called on people to be extra careful on the roads this weekend, as 252 people died in crashes over last year's Easter period. A trend which seems to have sadly continued. Alice Porter, Sky News.
Experts in artificial intelligence say they've come up with a way to allow people to be able to interact with digital versions of loved ones who've died. Digital avatars can simulate a person's voice, mannerisms and movements after just 30 minutes of the user being observed. Our technology correspondent, Arthi Nachiappan, reports.
This actually weirdly feels like a hug.
The impossible made possible by the metaverse. Hugging someone who's in a different country. But what if you could take it a step further and connect with someone who's not even alive? One company wants to make that happen.
All right, I'll give you the headset.
The first step is to put on your headset, select your avatar, and enter the metaverse. This virtual world is called Somnium Space. You can meet people, buy and sell virtual goods, and even play games.
It is right, yes!
Arthur created this virtual world. Now, he's introducing a new feature called Live Forever Mode, an AI tool that learns how you talk and behave so it can replicate you after you die.
You can record yourself in VR, your movements, your voice, and then recreate your digital twin inside virtual space. Whether you're still alive or you died, your digital twin can actually continue living inside that space and others can interact with that.
Hey there, I'm actually Arthur, a digital twin.
You know, I'm Arthur, you're not Arthur. Who are you?
Haha, I can see you're trying to start a joke there. It seems like you might have gotten cut off.
So who actually wants to live online forever? We met up with users in the metaverse who want to try it out.
If people are actually able to talk to me, get to know me, instead of having to hear me from third-hand accounts or fourth-hand accounts, and not really know who I am.
Do you have any concern about after you're no longer able to control it, what would happen to the avatar that you've created?
If it ever goes rogue, then the only thing I can really do is build a good base that has a good example to learn from.
Back in the real world, the company is preparing to roll out the feature later this year. But there are still details to iron out.
Somnium Space say they don't keep any of the data used to train your avatar here at their base in Prague. It's all stored on your computer at home, which means you have full control over it. The question now is, who takes over when you're no longer around?
If a bad actor were to get hold of information soon after a death, before the family has any chance of figuring out what's going on with the digital estate, that person could be impersonated, perhaps even in a way where we could continue our former employment, because there's no regulation around this.
As time goes on, technology will allow us to connect with dead loved ones in ways we didn't think were possible before. But we also have to prepare for that to have consequences we don't even know about yet. Artie Narchupan, Sky News in Prague.
Time now to get all the very latest sports news with Claire.
Liverpool's hopes of luring former midfielder Xabi Alonso back to the club are over after he announced he's staying at Bayer Leverkusen. Alonso had been heavily linked with a return to Anfield once Jurgen Klopp announced he would leave the club at the end of the season. Alonso had also been linked with moves to Bayern Munich and Real Madrid, but he's now staying put with the current Bundesliga leaders.
Last week, I had a very good meeting with Simon, with Fernando, with Sir Merin, when I informed them that my decision to continue being coach of Bayer Leverkusen.
In the Premier League, there's a potential title decider on Sunday when the leaders Arsenal travel to Manchester City. It's a game which will pit master against apprentice, with City head coach Pep Guardiola up against Arsenal boss Mikel Arteta.
Last 10 games in the Premier League, now start, the important thing against the leaders of the Premier League of this season at home with our people, and I'm pretty sure they will give us what we need to perform our best.
My admiration and what I feel for him, certainly not. In my opinion, he's the best coach in the world by a mile, and he's one of the nicest persons I have met in football, and certainly one of the ones that I have had more fun and laugh working with, and that's going to stay there forever.
In the race for promotion to the Premier League, Ipswich are the new Championship leaders after they won, and both Leeds and Leicester had disappointing results. Ipswich, who started the day in third, won thanks to this Connor Chaplin goal. They are now a point clear at the top with 7 games left to play. Leeds dropped to second after being held to a 2-2 draw at Watford. They needed this late equaliser from substitute Matteo Joseph to stay in the automatic promotion places. Leicester's defeat, though, at Bristol City means they drop out of the top 2. This Anis Mehmeti goal proved to be enough to beat them at Ashton Gate, but perhaps crucially, they do have a game in hand. To the NFL now, and Super Bowl champions Kansas City Chiefs have confirmed the signing of former Wales Rugby Union international Lewis Rees-Zammit. Rees-Zammit, who quit rugby on the eve of the Six Nations, joined the International Player Pathway Programme, where hopefuls from outside the United States can pursue their dream of playing in the NFL. And it would seem his dream has now come true. Scottie Scheffler and Tony Finau are the names at the top of the leaderboard after 2 rounds of the Houston Open. But it's a shot from the little-known Chan Kim, which will live long in the memory. Chan took aim from the tee at the par 3 9th and aced it. He started the day 1 over par, but went on to finish 2 under, thanks to this. The Australian Open champion Jannik Sinner is through to the final of the Miami Open after a straight sets win over Daniil Medvedev. Medvedev had failed to drop a single set prior to the semi-final, but found Sinner in blistering form as he cruised to a 6-1, 6-2 win. He'll play either Grigor Dimitrov or Alexander Zverev in the final. That's it from me for now, but don't forget there's plenty more for you over on Sky Sports News. I'll be back here a little later.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by the Sun's deputy political editor, Ryan Saby, and the Guardian columnist, Zoe Williams. Amongst the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of the Belfast Telegraph, their headline, Donaldson bombshell. Do stay with us for more. Welcome back. You're watching Sky News. In just a moment, the press preview. A first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. But first, our top stories. Sir Jeffrey Donaldson resigns as leader of the Democratic Unionist Party after being charged with historical offences. The head of one of Haiti's most powerful gangs has told Sky News he would consider a ceasefire to end the current fighting. And misery for motorists with long queues at Dover at the start of the Easter getaway. You are watching the press preview, a first look at what's on the front pages as they arrive. In the next half hour, we'll see what's making the headlines with The Sun's deputy political editor, Ryan Sabey, and The Guardian columnist, Zoe Williams. So let's see what's on some of those front pages for you now. The Belfast Telegraph leads with the news that Democratic Unionist Party leader Sir Jeffrey Donaldson has resigned, having been charged with historical sex offences. The Mail carries a poll suggesting that more voters now trust Labour over the Conservatives when it comes to handling defence matters. Here's The Express. Their headline, Tory MPs warn voting for Reform UK will kill Brexit. The Times understands that the Health Secretary, Victoria Atkins, is looking at proposals that would see patients at hospitals with the longest waiting lists treated privately instead. The Financial Times reports that Thames Water is seeking approval from the government and the regulator Ofwat to increase customers' bills by 56% over the next 6 years. The Daily Telegraph says that ministers are planning to introduce migrant crime league tables, which would require the crime rates of each nation's migrants in England and Wales to be published annually. The Guardian reports schools risk fuelling hate by avoiding talk of the Israel-Gaza war. The Mirror is outraged that a man previously convicted of rape has now been set free from another prison sentence for forging a winning lottery ticket after serving less than half of his term. The Eye hears that 16 million miles worth of bus routes across England have been cancelled in an effort by councils to save money. The Sun reacts to a possible shortage of Easter treats with the headline, Chocky Horror. While The Star tells us that new rules around facial hair for army members are oddly specific. A reminder that by scanning the QR code you'll see on screen during the programme, you can check out the front pages of tomorrow's newspapers while you watch us. And we are joined tonight by Ryan Sabey and Zoe Williams. Welcome to both of you. Let's start with the Belfast Telegraph weekend edition, of course, and the story of Jeffrey Donaldson. Their headline, Donaldson bombshell. Ryan.
Yeah, there's big news that broke this morning and lunchtime. There was something we thought may have been up with his social media accounts that had been deleted, and it quickly emerged around lunchtime that he had resigned with immediate effect. And I think not only does it sort of leaves the party in turmoil in one respect. Gavin Robinson has stepped up to become leader, but what does it mean for Stormont? That's only been in place for the last few weeks, re-established, got that power sharing back up and running, and you kind of wonder whether there are questions about that. But you look to a couple of people, several people who've commented on that today. Julian Smith, the former Northern Ireland Secretary, he said he wasn't particularly concerned about it and said it will press on regardless. And Michelle O'Neill, the First Minister, the Sinn Féin leader, also said that she remains committed to the process. So on one surface, you've got the big headline of what's actually happened to the individual. But I think in the grand scheme of things, it seems like the power sharing and Stormont will press ahead and just carry on.
What do you think, Zoe, in terms of the political ramifications? As we say, power sharing, DUP's only just gone back into power sharing the last couple of months.
Well, I think that it would be very, very crass of the other parties to try and score a political point against the DUP on the basis of these allegations, because, whatever's been established, everybody knows they're extremely serious. And I think precisely because that power-sharing agreement is relatively new and relatively fragile, everybody concerned is being very careful to say, you know, that is one person, one allegation, extremely serious, nothing to do with DUP politics. And I think it will be in everybody's interest to maintain that line. But, you know, it might even make them more conciliatory and more cooperative than they would have been otherwise.
Do you share that optimism?
I think so, because you look at over the last 2 years, it's taken for the power sharing to get back up, and the British government have put in a lot of money, £3 billion or so, just to get those institutions and put money into hospitals and sort out the public sector payout there. So I think, and as we're at such that sort of early stage, I think they'll just press ahead, and this will be treated almost in isolation in one respect.
We'll be handling the power sharing with kid gloves. Let's have a look at the Mail, and this is the Mail's own survey poll, suggesting that voters no longer view the Tories as the party of defence, their poll reveals.
I mean,
why are you smiling?
I'm just smiling because it's really funny, right? Because, you know, Labour, the further it goes from the last time Labour was in power, the less people really know, the less people can really remember what they would do on something like defence. And so people just rely on vibes, and they're like, and, you know, especially, and the media is really guilty of this, much more than kind of voters. They're kind of, vague peacenik vibes, I remember them. Aren't they the people who are against nuclear weapons? Isn't Jeremy Corbyn a bit of a peacenik? You know, a kind of cluster of impressions gather around the party on what kind of defenders of national security it would be, which has very little relation to, you know, what the pledges are, what the manifesto says, what the leader says. So in order for them to be more trusted on defence than the Conservatives must have tumbled so far in everybody's estimation. And I think probably rightly, you know, everything is underfunded, so people think the army is underfunded, which it is. Everything is kind of breaking or broken, so people think the army is breaking or broken, which it is. It's really just being pulled into all their kind of reputation for competency on matters of defence and militarism is completely being pulled into everything, whether it's the sewage or the NHS or anything else, any other kind of Conservative mess that you look at. And I think Labour are benefiting from that without actually necessarily having done anything.
And Ryan, this from a Conservative-leaning newspaper.
That's right, yeah. I think it just shows you that we did a poll in our paper this week, and it shows that pretty much on every subject, Labour were leaning, whether you look at Labour leading, whether that's on the economy, the NHS, even who do you think is better out of Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer on the world stage? Keir Starmer won that. He's only been on an afternoon trip to meet Emmanuel Macron, and he's been to Canada to meet Justin Trudeau. So there isn't really the evidence to show that, but I think it's that institutional or the lack of memory of what it was like. And the infighting, particularly on defence in the Conservative Party, where you've got the Defence Secretary Grant Shapps calling for 3% of GDP to be spent on defence spending. You've got James Heappey who quit this week asking for 2.5%. So they're just shy, and they're just not reaching those targets that a lot of their MPs and ministers want.
And points to dissatisfaction, as you say, with the Conservative government overall. Let's have a look at the Express, Zoe, and this story, political also, regarding the fact that Tory MPs are warning against Reform UK, that, you know, if the Tories help them in, they could kill Brexit, they say.
I mean, sorry, if I was grinning before about Labour being more trusted on defence, I'm really grinning about this story because it completely turns on its head what reform or the kind of reform-like parties of the past were invented for, right? You know, the whole kind of UKIP onwards was invented as the kind of progenitor and the main arguer for Brexit. And so to see the Tories now reduced to saying, if you cast this vote, you will be undermining the project of Farage and everybody else in this party, just shows what kind of an absolutely contorted, casuistic situation they've got themselves into, where they're having to style themselves as the architects of a Brexit, which kind of most people don't really want to talk about anymore. And really, anybody who did want to talk about it would say that Nigel Farage was a much greater proponent of it than Rishi Sunak.
Yeah, elsewhere, not in this particular article, but elsewhere, Ryan, there's a suggestion that Tories want Rishi Sunak to give Nigel Farage some sort of enticement or sweeties, ennoblement, but
That's
not.
Right. There's been
campaign for your
lots
reform.
of talk, and I think government sources have put it out as a scurrilous rumour that Nigel Farage could be made an ambassador for the UK ambassador out in Washington DC as that sweetie for him, and also maybe given a peerage on the basis that the Reform Party, Nigel Farage was a founder of the Reform Party, that they don't put people up in certain seats. Like just remember, go back to 2019 when the Brexit Party really did do the Conservatives a favour and probably handed them a lot of seats by standing candidates down in those seats. But you just don't feel like that's not on the cards this time. You listen to the language from the leader, Richard Tice, and that's not happening.
And also, do you remember how many peerages Boris Johnson had to give out for that? I mean, ridiculous peerages like Claire Fox. What's she doing in the House of Lords? It's just a kind of desperate scramble to get the Brexit Party to stand down. And I just don't think Sunak would have that kind of capital, even if he felt inclined to do it.
What do you think to the relationship with Nigel Farage and the Conservative Party? Because the last Tory conference, he was almost seen as being welcomed into the fold.
Well, the thing is with Nigel Farage, the man has got no honour as far as I'm concerned, because in that Tory conference he was wandering around like he was a kind of commentator, like a kind of mischievous, cheerful commentator who had nothing to do with the actual overall politics of the thing. So he does pose an existential threat to this party, right? There are places in this country where Reform is polling higher than the Conservatives. He could drive a complete coach and horses. He could completely destroy their whatever seats they could kind of pick up in what everybody thinks is going to be a Labour victory. So, there are loads of kind of perfectly sober heads predicting 100 seats for the Tories. The Reform Party could take them down to, double digits, 36 seats. And they still don't know how to deal with him. They still don't know how to take him head on. And the reason, I think, is that in the kind of post-election loss new Tory party, which everybody thinks will lurch to the right, nobody knows what kind of ally he's going to be and what kind of ally they'll need him to be.
Interesting you think that he's got quite a bit of power. We must break there. Coming up, Thames Water seeks approval for a massive hike to customers' bills, but that's not the only increase on the horizon. We'll discuss that next.
It's extremely worrying. I mean, we know that they've already established themselves now in northern France, which means they can actually fly across the Channel quite easily. So keeping them out of the country is going to be very, very difficult. But it is also a fact that in the latter part of last year, August, September and October, over 14 nests were destroyed, and not all of them were in Kent. Now, at that stage, new queens will have already hatched, gone off to find somewhere to overwinter. So it is virtually certain now that the Asian hornets are breeding and living in the UK, and that's huge concern. As you said, an adult Asian hornet can eat roughly 50 honeybees. That also transcribes to an entire nest of bumblebees for one hornet. So imagine what a nest of them could be doing to our population of bees. They could have quite a catastrophic impact on bees because they've come in from abroad, there are not a lot of things that go and predate them in this country. So it's very, very worrying. And of course, they're establishing in the moment in southern England, and that is where some of our rarest bumblebees exist, things like the shrill carder-bee and the brown-banded carder-bee. So it'd be quite easy to see them having a devastating impact on populations like that. And of course, the knock-on effect will also be a devastating impact on pollination in this country. If we lost all our pollinators, it would put about £2 billion a year on our food bill for selected foods like fruit and peas, etc., because we have to pay people the minimum wage to go out and hand pollinate. So the knock-on effect for consumers in this country alone would be absolutely catastrophic if they get established and wreak havoc. You must report them immediately, even if you're not 100% sure, because it could be a European hornet, which are actually quite welcome visitors to our gardens and our landscape. But if you see something, report it. The people will come out there, they will check it out. If it's a European hornet, nothing to worry about. If it's an Asian hornet, they will try and track it down. And sometimes they will actually put a little tracking device on board one if they can capture it, and then they can track it back to its nest. And that's the only way really to find where these nests are and to be able to destroy the nest. So if you see something, even if you're in doubt, report it. If you can get a picture, even better.
I'm Martin Brunt, and I'm Sky's crime correspondent.
Welcome back. You are watching the press preview. Still with me, Ryan Saby and Zoe Williams. Let's take a look at the front page of the FT Weekend and this story concerning Thames Water and them seeking approval for quite hefty bill hikes. Zoe.
I mean, especially reported by the FT, you get this kind of very neutral, very impartial, kind of financially literate analysis, which says they weren't going to get any inward investment unless they found a way to make it profitable. They couldn't relax the regulations on how much sewage they're allowed to put into the rivers because everybody's so angry already. The shareholders had already rejected an injection of cash. And so the only place to go is to put bills up. That's the only place to go. But from a consumer point of view, from a citizen point of view, to see these companies who have been absolutely skimming money off what is effectively a monopoly ever since it was privatised. You know, there's no way you can't shop around for your water. Will be completely gutting. I think it's not something which people are going to forgive.
And 56%. That's huge.
It's not just a small rise. Yeah, as I say, 56% go up by
2030.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a few years. It's going to be a real jump. And I think one of the few things that political people have been saying to me this week, there's a real visual this weekend on how good the water will be. If you look at the Oxford-Cambridge boat race, and actually a lot of the people, when they have the traditional throwing the cocks into the water at the end, I think some of them are actually going to refuse to just do it because the water quality is so poor. You've got no idea what you're going to pick up, and there's reports of waterborne disease and hospital admissions going up over the last few years as well. So it's a real problem. So you don't mind paying the money if you're going to get an absolute quality service, but when they're going up and the service is probably going down, there's a real problem.
It's really, really sad. I mean, I remember when I was young, people used to say, don't jump in the Thames because you might get Weil's disease, but that was carried by rats. Now they're talking about E. coli, which is basically because of sewage. We'd like completely ruined our kind of public realm, our public water realm. And you know, it's really hard to escape the conclusion that all the debt that's been loaded onto the water companies and all the infrastructure that wasn't renewed, that wasn't looked after, is because shareholders have taken too much out. I mean, there isn't another conclusion.
And it's such an emotive subject. The Liberal Democrats, in particular, are going to, maybe not be quite front and centre of their election campaign, but they'll be putting a lot of attack adverts out on social media. We've all seen them of sewage flowing into the seas and the rivers, and people take note, and they'll vote with their feet when they see that.
Yeah, the shareholders ruling out injecting 500 million of equity, but it seems inevitable, these bill rises. Not the only bills going up. There's a long list in the Mirror, Zoe.
I tell you what really is scary. So the Mirror has got a kind of aggregate of all the bills that are going up, and they add up £320 to £320 from April over the course of the year. What will scare you if you read this closely is that they've got a consumer expert at the start, this guy Greg Marsh, who tells you how to avoid your bills going up. And his first tip is, if you're eligible for a single person discount on council tax, go on the council tax website and tell them. And you're like, everybody who's eligible for a single person discount knows that already.
Wasn't the tip I thought you were going to share.
Exactly. It really does send a chill through your blood that you know that's the best they can come up with. I think money-saving experts are really at the end of their rope. Things are just getting more expensive, and the fact that inflation has kind of levelled does not mean prices are coming down.
And Ryan, the typical family of four will be paying more than £300 for household bills.
Yeah, just when you thought things were going quite well with energy bills coming down after the war in Ukraine is obviously still going on, but the energy prices have come down and the price cap has come down, but that has been offset completely. So the energy bills on average will go down by about £230, but all these other bills added up, your bills will be going up by £330, whether that's water, broadband, council tax. All these things are going up, and the council tax in particular going up by sort of 5% or so. So it's really going to hit. I mean, as you say, thankfully, inflation is a lot lower than what it was a couple of years ago, 11.1%. But it's a real struggle for people.
No, absolutely. The Mirror, though, trying to inject a little bit of humour by saying it's not an April Fool. There really will be these rises. That's not funny.
That is funny.
No, not at all. That was my point. Let's take a look at the weather for you now.